Meeting to order today, April the 17th, 2025, 3 o'clock. Colin Zimmerman sent me a text. He's out of town, so he won't be joining us, but I believe everyone else is present this time. Toby, would you like to do the invocation for us?
Sure would. Dear Heavenly Father, I just praise your holy, wonderful name, Lord. I pray that you'll just bless us today as we come forth to business for Sumner County, Lord. Help us to be a blessing and pure heart on the decisions that we make concerning the citizens of this county. All these things I ask in Christ Jesus' name. Amen.
So the next item is approval of the agenda. I would like to add an item for consideration that I didn't get on here. I would like to just add the item of the 81 Act to the agenda so that we can just have continuing discussion as we go forward that anybody wants to talk about.
Where do you want to add that?
So,
New business?
You don't have to.
yes,
New business B?
B.
I'll second that.
And not anticipating a lot on it, just to put it in here as we move forward. Is everybody okay with that? Can I, everybody
You got a
in favor?
second?
I got a second? Oh, thank you, I didn't hear it. All in favor? Aye? Any opposed? So we add the item. Recognition of the public. Seeing none, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes from March the 20th.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Minutes approved. Report of the committee chairman. We have a lot of items that we keep tumbling around in this committee. I'd just like to outline, to kind of bring into focus what some of the items are that we've looked at. We've talked, and we're going to talk about more today, and specifically on the personnel policy. We've talked about the purchasing policy, and we talk about the payroll issues. And these three items, they just keep rolling around. And as we go forward in the next couple of months, I'm going to try and organize our agenda to address these specifically, and so we can focus instead of just jumping back and forth between the items. So just like that out there. That's all I have to say. Mayor?
No report, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Law Director? Do you have a report for us, Mr. Law Director?
Oh, I'm sitting here looking for somebody to say something. No, other than what's going to be asked of me later, no.
So you have the report of the trustee in your packet. Cindy was unable to make it today. If anyone has questions, they can contact her after the meeting. If we'd like to discuss any of her stuff, we can talk about it if anybody has questions. Speak now.
John, are we on target with just the tax collections in general? Everything looking good there?
As far as I know, we are. Cindy's not expressed any concerns on any of the collections, so.
We monitor them monthly, they're right.
The only item I'd like to bring up from the trustee's office, something I've been thinking about. Last year I went down and talked to their office about the forms they fill out for the elderly, the tax freeze information. Those forms are filled out every year manually, and we have employees down there doing it. They feel that the forms are too difficult to automate them online for people, but as the county grows, I'd like to look at trying to help them find some automation so that we can at least just hit a button. If Ms. Brown comes in, we could just hit a button and say, did anything change, Ms. Brown, and go forward. I don't like seeing the people waiting in the hallway. They told me last year they had to, somebody had to leave because they were a diabetic and they waited so long that they just couldn't wait any longer.
Some software for tax relief?
If we could talk to Cindy about like how we could help her. I know at the time I think she had 2.5 employees that were filling out those papers, and it's like I said, they fill them out every year. The people have to come in and apply, sit down in a private spot, and go through the same paperwork year after year. So it seems like we could find some automation.
Bear in mind, those are state forms
Mm-hmm.
they have to complete, so you probably have to work that out with the state.
Yeah.
If they will allow the automation.
Exactly, but let's ask.
Yeah, collection of data.
Thank you. Next item is the report of the finance director.
The first item A is the job description. This is the one on file, and I updated it, as I told the committee back on the 9th, because it has a date on it. I think it's pretty much up to date. There may be a few things that could be added or even shortened, but, since we're talking on the next item on recruitment, it may be something that the committee wants to look at over the next month and determine if they have something that they see needs to be added or try to move to someone else or whatever. I know it's a long job description. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
One under the certificates, license, and registration, this active license as a certified public accountant in the state of Tennessee. What you might want to consider there is to say, license as a CPA, with the understanding you will get licensed.
But you could get it here.
Yeah.
The Private Act requires you to be one, but you could put in there,
Transitioning to.
must be, what's it called?
Qualified for
Reciprocity in this. Most states have here, I think there's a few that don't.
But that's just a thought, when you go start going recruiting on this, you'll close it down real quick to any out-of-state candidate if they see that, so.
Right, or must be able to transfer a license successfully within, I don't know, 30 days or whatever the reasonable amount is.
Since the last meeting, I called a couple of recruiting firms, just so I can get an idea of what's the cost, process that you go through. And I think we had talked about some ranges last meeting, that we thought maybe 20-30% would be kind of the finder's fee. That is the case. Some would go high as 40%, which would probably never go there, but I would say that we're looking at a recruiting firm. You're looking probably at 30% of total salary. So in this case, let's say it's, it's $200K, and we would be $60,000, pretty quick. Having used those in the past in different jobs, they can be very helpful, and they can be not helpful, depending on the candidate they get. So, but I do think that's the next logical step, is to work in conjunction with this job description, which David, I agree with you, I think pretty much there on this, is to go ahead and think about how we move forward on engaging a recruiting firm or a staffing firm, or maybe a collection of that plus tap local, publications, AFCPA, TSCPA, and see if we can get some candidates. And I do think the transition here is really important. And I know we got the 81-2012 Act down, but as we look to understand how to transition into 81, if we choose to do that, I don't think we choose, but if we have to, this one is longer because it's different. But that's going to create a lot of extra work. So we can get to that when we get to that. But I did look at it. I think it's solid. I mean, personally, but we certainly want this committee to opine on it before we move forward.
I think before we move forward, we need to resolve this 81 versus 2012 Act, because there is a disagreement there on which act we're actually following. And so I think we need to get a resolution. I'm working on that now. It's unfortunately, I think it's going to require a judge's ruling on it, a judge's interpretation. We can have 3 attorneys and have 3 different opinions, just like appraisals. And I think we're going to have a definitive ruling on this before we move forward. So I think that would be my position as we're going forward on this. And I want to move this expeditiously as possible. But I do want that cleared up so we have a clear delineation of responsibilities.
Well, I do know that you spent a lot of time on this.
Yes.
You spent a lot of time trying to get a technical opinion on this. I saw that in the on what you say. So, I mean, the bottom line is on this, we're not in compliance with either act, truth be known. But the 81 Act puts additional burden on us to consolidate all the finances. And that, to me, is where I'm focused. Whether the mayor recruits this David's position or this committee, I'm not focused on that. We'll get to the right candidate. But I am focused on complying with the statute relative to consolidation of financial statements and businesses. And the big one is the school. Right now, the school is not consolidated, and we certainly want to vet that out and see how we can work that through. I mean, I don't write the act. I mean, as a chairperson here on this committee, I just here to follow the law and try to do what's right. But we do need to figure out between your technical reading and what you're saying, Mayor, how we move this forward. How do you get it past your opinion into a judge? That's a question for you, Eric.
Well, my position is the 81 Act, the statute's very clear on how you get rid of it, and it was never gotten rid of. So we're under the 81 Act. The 2012 Act, the problem we have with the 2012 Act, it's not fully implemented. So it's a hard argument to make that we want to work under this 2012 Act to replace the 81 Act when we don't have a fully implemented 2012 Act. So that's the hang-up there, and that's where it puts us right back under the 81. My legal opinion would be that we operate under the 81 Act. We view the 2012 Act as a kind of a financial policy passed by the commission. If any part of that is not addressed in the 81 Act, or it creates tighter requirements that the 81 Act doesn't address, then you would follow that part of the 2012 Act as a policy that was passed by the commission. If there's a conflict between the two, the 81 Act's going to trump because it was never gotten rid of. So that's, if we're going to keep any of the 2012 Act alive, that's the only way I see it being kept alive as a policy, financial policy that was passed in anticipation of being a fully implemented Financial Management Act, but it's not fully implemented. So that's where we're at, and I don't know where a judge is going to clean that up.
Can I just one second?
Oh, absolutely.
And one item that I have discussed with Mr. Sittler, and I'm not clear on, is how the 2002 feeds into that, because part of the 2000, it's gone completely, because even though we have not fully implemented the 12, I'm just saying on the table, I'm not quite sure that I feel that we completely, because we haven't implemented the 12, which was dependent, but we had the 2, and we said we're going to implement the 12, but since we've never really implemented it, it feels to me like some of the 2 is still there. But that, I will.
It would be the same logic. That's what he just said about the 2000.
Yeah, and the other problem.
And I would say 1981.
I just want to lay that on the table, that I still think that that's in there somewhere. And then, I don't want to take your thunder.
Oh, no, you're fine. I don't know that I have any thunder.
The one thing that CTAS said, and before we jump to a judge needs to rule, CTAS said the easiest thing we can do is put it right back before the commission and have them vote to either vote one piece out, keep one piece, or what they want to do. That would be a cheaper.
That would be the smartest option, but you have to have 16 votes to repeal the 81 Act or the 2012 Act.
We all know where we're at, yes.
So we know where we're at on that.
But
What my request is I would like a legal opinion from our legal department stating what he just said. I would like that in writing.
So, okay, is that a problem? I mean, that seems, I'm wanting as much as I can get in writing.
Sure.
I'm trying to get something from the comptroller's office in writing. I've gotten phone calls, but nothing in writing. Trying.
Well, if I can give you a little history on this, and we have another
Are
problem.
you still good to hold?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, I apologize.
No, you're fine, you're fine.
The other problem we have is the amendment to the 2012 Act, where we removed all the timelines. So now we've got this not fully implemented 2012 with no deadlines, just progress towards. So
Which
it's
we're not making.
exactly. So here's the thing. it doesn't matter to me which way the commission goes, but from a legal standpoint, the path of least resistance is exactly what's been brought up, is to get rid of one of them.
Mhm.
But the problem with getting rid of the 1981 is gonna be you don't have a fully implemented management act. So keep that in mind. And when CTAS was first approached with this, because this all started over me researching, trying to sell a piece of property. And that's when this reared its ugly head. And I contacted CTAS right out of the gate, and I said, have y'all run into this before? Because this is my interpretation. And they told me, no, that's gone, y'all voted that away, et cetera, et cetera. And then I said, I don't think you're right. That's when they got their legal people involved, and they came up with the same conclusion I did. So I'm fairly certain, and by all means, I will get you that legal opinion.
Yes,
But this,
I understand. You went through this last month, and we
and
can,
if we're going to take a path of least resistance, the easiest way is to get rid of the 2012.
Mr. Langford.
I just had a question. I was like, so are we saying the 1981 Act was fully implemented?
No.
Because we're not following, we're saying that we can't follow 2012 because it wasn't fully implemented, but 1981 wasn't either.
State for us to follow that act. Now, it did give us the parameters to create our own and then bow out of it with the 2/3 majority vote. And the other problem is...
No, my question, I don't mean to catch up, my question was, is have we fully implemented the 1981 Act?
I can't answer that.
The 80,
Right, because he's saying the 2012 Act is not fully implemented, and that's why it's not.
no, we did not.
Yeah,
We
so-
have not, because that would be centralized. The 81 would be centralized
Right.
schools, centralized highway,
Right.
a few more pieces. We would have Kronos up and running, you would have Kronos, or a payroll.
This would drop out.
Yeah, it would drop off so many pieces in and out.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm just asking, because I mean, I understand what everybody's saying, I'm just saying, like, the 2012 Act may not be fully implemented, but the 1981 Act isn't either.
Well, even if it had been at any time, it's not now, that's for sure. And I will say the other problem we have is we've addressed the 81 Act in resolutions, and we've even made an attempt to get rid of the 81 Act, I believe, at one time, and couldn't get the 16 votes.
2012.
That was prior to the implementation of the 2012 Act.
So the point being that we were all aware of the 81 Act as a county, we just never chose to get rid of it.
All I can say is the intent of the 12 Act was to remove the 81, but as far as if it did, I can't.
The fact that we've issued umpteen bonds and had a committee called the 2012 Financial Management Committee since 2012.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of
What is the exact language? Because I didn't bring, it wasn't on the agenda, so I didn't bring my notes. But if I remember correctly, the term used is that you may repeal this act in the same manner in which it was passed, not you shall.
Well, it says you may, meaning if you don't want to stay under it, this is what you need to do. Otherwise, you stay under it.
You may repeal it.
But you might repeal it
By enacting the 2012, you're effectively repealing it.
That's not what the statute says. It says the only way to get rid of it is the 2/3 vote.
It says that the only way you can get rid of it is 2/3 vote.
It's got what, and I
I
wasn't prepared
And
for
can
this
we-
either, but
in the
I think
interest
it
of time, can
also
we,
has language in effect of what brought it, because it had to be voted in too, right, David?
Yeah, it had to have a 2/3.
Yeah, so it's got to go out the same way it came in.
in the interest of time, can you put that in your, letter of your
Full legal opinion. Yeah.
full legal opinion? Because all we're gonna do is go back and forth.
Well, it will be, because
Yes,
that's the
it'll be there.
integral part about getting rid
So,
of it.
yes, in the interest of time.
Yeah.
We went over this last month. Not everybody was here, but you went over it, and CTASC has sent us out an email with their opinion. We're getting other opinions. You're gonna give us an opinion, and in the interest of time, I don't think we're gonna get anywhere. The only thing I would like to propose, and I know we went right straight to what we all want to talk about, so let's just finish this up. I'll make the motion that we ask the commission to take a vote. We all think that we know that the vote won't go anywhere, and I might not get a second on this, but that's the easiest path forward. We can all assume that it won't pass either way, or it won't do any good, but I'd like to take that, to give it a try.
So what exactly do you want to vote on?
So, that's what I'd like to say. How would we like to, as a committee, we,
I make a motion that you recommend to the commission to repeal the 1981 Act.
Second.
you want to repeal the 81?
Yes, with a two-thirds vote.
You second that? You did.
So we would have to have the two-thirds vote. Would we also like to, put the other one, vote up?
I'm not making a motion.
And which is
I'll
that?
make you go back.
Now, let's finish this one first. We gotta finish this one first. All right, so all in favor of the motion to send to the commission to repeal the 81, it would take a two-thirds vote.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One no.
What
All
was
right.
on your original motion, what were you asking today
To
to vote on
repeal
what?
the 1981 Act.
I was asking,
No, that's
yeah,
what John did.
I asked for an
the
opinion
same
on
thing?
which way do
His
we
is
wanna
a
go.
standalone motion.
Okay.
So then, we can also, entertain a motion to go for the repeal of the 12 amended 19. If anybody would like,
I'll second that.
okay, I'll make that motion,
I thought you just did.
yes. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
3. What would you,
I think doing the 81 does both. If you go and repeal that, then you go back on 2012. So if you don't repeal the 81 Act, there's no need to go and do the 2012, because that's where you stand. So I think the recommendation Mr. Mayor had is the right. Can we get there? I don't know. But let's see.
okay,
To-
excellent, motion failed.
I would like to, I'm sorry, we're
No,
done with that
I
one?
just wanted to throw it out there and give it a chance. I mean, it's the easiest path,
You've got your vote, so it's over.
yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
I just want to be clear, there's no way this is making Monday, there's serious notice implications here, so it will be May. Okay.
And then there's other, if you could update us and research before our next meeting, there's other pieces of this,
Update you with what?
like how this would even hit the state legislator's calendar. I mean, we can vote all we want, but this is a private act. Or this, would it go through, if you could just come, we can talk about it offline, how this would affect if they were to pass this. We can't even get back before the state legislator before next January to even see if it's a possibility, because it's their, it would be up to them, not us, ultimately. We'd be asking them correctly.
I'm not sure, I'll have to get you an answer.
You know
to
what I'm
that.
saying?
On the 81,
Yeah, I think
It's just a repeal
It's just a
vote.
repeal.
the
So
private
then
act's
we would be
the one-
fine.
The private act's the one you have to ask
4.
for, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This is public, so, yeah, we can just repeal it.
Just in terms of sequence, I think, so we have it all tight, is to have your legal opinion at our next meeting, so we can look at it. And then that will give the commissioner something to work off of it. Does that sound reasonable?
If y'all are meeting before then, yes.
Yeah.
We may have to it depends on how Mondays and Thursdays fall, whether we meet before it.
I'm just saying that's the only thing that would change the parameters is y'all's next meeting.
Let's, I mean,
We can just set a meeting before the next commission meeting.
yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Can you look at the
Because I do
calendar and
think
get back to us
having
before the end of the
time,
meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have
Yeah.
a committee of count-
That's what I was
obviously,
gonna go for.
it's important before we go ask them to repeal something.
I don't have a problem doing
And
that.
I agree, there's a lot.
Everybody good with that? All right, very good.
Let me go ahead and throw one more kink into it. I was gonna do this tomorrow, but, we'll go ahead and just be public in. I wanna go ahead, if the law director renders his opinion, I think effectively he's rendering an opinion that there's a conflict, that he can't represent me. Is that correct, Mr. Attorney?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay. Because I'm gonna need that in writing as well, with that opinion.
That, the fact that there's a conflict.
That there will be, since he's the commission's attorney, he's got a conflict and he's unable to represent me.
I think the better course of action, if I may, is you review it, and if you decide to go another route, you say something then, and then I'll respond accordingly.
Okay,
All right.
that'll work. I can do that.
Will you need an appropriation sent to budget for a lawyer?
We'll discuss that meeting. Yep, let's.
All right, that was a really robust job description discussion.
Job description was
Come, I would say.
I don't know, it went all over the place.
If I
We
call
did-
that.
job description was easy.
We technically got the agenda. Do you want to go ahead and move to make the 81 Act old business now?
And just as long as we don't have to discuss it again when we go through old
That's
business.
exactly what I'm asking.
I'd rather not be.
Be old business for next month.
Yes, without objection. All right, let's see where recruitment takes us.
Recruitment, I've contacted 2 entities. One responded back, they're gonna send a proposal just to see what it looks like. The other one, we didn't even get a response, so before I move forward any further, we might wanna wait to see how everything resolves out on the acts, because it'll affect the job description potentially, one way or the other.
So,
That's okay.
Madam Chairman, I don't see the companies that
I sent that email to them, they didn't move, they haven't sent anything back.
nobody's responded to.
One said they're gonna send me a proposal, and one didn't respond back at all.
Can you share those companies with the committee?
Yeah, one of them was SGR, which is Strategic Government Resources, and they said they would send a proposal, and then I'll have to go upstairs and get my email to figure out what the other one was. It was, I had several, and just honestly chose 2 of them.
Just shoot an email, that'd be fine.
And haven't got anything back from the other one, and hopefully SGR will send something next week, maybe, I don't know.
If anybody else, I have something on recruitment, if anybody else first.
I was just, I'm sorry, I was wondering, Mr. Kerr, you did some research. Who did you talk to? Or who did you?
Well, one of the firms was, Whitkeeper is actually the firm. It's exactly that kind of firm. They really, what I'm trying to do here is just gauge, I have contact with just gauge what kind of costs we're talking about. And they have a government practice, they would assign a resource to us, but it would be in a firm like that, would be the 30 to 40% range. And I know this guy pretty well. He said that anywhere you go, you'd see that number. But I mean, they bring pool candidates, they screen them, and it takes a lot of labor off of us to do all that back office stuff with candidates. But I'm not married to that firm, that was just somebody I talked to.
They'll do a full media search and all kinds of things you guys can't necessarily find.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was kind of a go-to for your type of position, David. If there's like,
There's
a couple companies that are.
SGR was one that was pretty active. I looked on their site. Don't appear to have as many, but they may be transitioning. I've got several that I receive them from regularly, so I just chose 2 of those. And then, I know GFOA, which is Government Financial Officers Association, they have a job board, which would be a good place to put stuff. But there's several places to look. But I just randomly chose 2 to see how they would respond.
So without falling back into the 81 discussion piece, the transitions they do cost money. So they do. How much it's going to cost and how much the county will bear is to be seen. There are 2 paths between the 81 and the amendment from 19. And with the 81, this committee would select and hire the finance director. The budget committee would determine the salaries and stuff. With the 2012, the mayor will select and the commission will appoint, is that what we would call it, or ratify?
Ratify or rescind.
Either way, in the end, those are the 2 pieces that happen. But we're going to have to still make this transition, whether we want to talk about it or not, and how we get there. And all I want is the best pool of people. This is going to potentially affect the county for decades. So I'm just looking that we get the best pool, and I don't really care in the end if it's us that look at the pool together, or if the mayor's looking at it in his office, or if he wants to ask us. I don't care how we get there, but I think that it's important that we do get there. Mr. Long gave the budget committee the dates. Would you like to restate the soonest you might leave?
It would be September 1 this year to June 30th, 2026, somewhere in that range. And I will give as per contract, I will give a 60-day notice. So anytime September 1 after with the 60-day notice.
That's how long we argue about 1981, does that change it from June?
Maybe. I like to stay and help you guys because
I believe it might.
I came in without any transition, and I can be honest, it would be very helpful, because you should get somebody that knows GASB, and what's really helpful is to know where everything's at, and there's a lot of it.
And all the people, and
So,
transition's key.
I just don't want to get hung up on which one of these acts we're gonna be following. I want to send us on down the road to figuring out where we're gonna get our pool, and then whoever decides, even, I don't know, if we can like just pick somebody off the street to decide so we don't all fight. I just want to decide, somebody to find the best candidate. So I just don't want to get this hung up. I want to.
I think we have mutual goals.
Excellent, excellent. So there we are on recruitment. Budget's going to be budget did not want to take it up this month, as far as an appropriation, but I assume next month they will.
What I currently have in the budget request is for a 90-day overlap, which that's 90 working days, not actually, your 90 working days, not calendar days, so that would be several months, about 4.5 months. That's, if I don't stay the whole time, we would allow them earlier. If we stay, we could actually overlap 4.5 months. If you think there's longer, I'm saying the longer you get, the more helpful it is in most instances, and if nothing else, help catch up some of the projects.
So I wonder if we could, take a stab at a motion, the mayor motion I know you said budget's going to consider your transition time. Could we ask budget? Mr. Kerr's pretty confident about, I think that's reasonable, about 30-40%. Also, we're talking 60,000. Would we want to go ahead and ask for an allocation for up to 60,000 to hire a search firm, and then this committee can talk so that we're not having to try to work out 1981, 2012, and then I think it was to get to your point, then it's September, October at the earliest, and then we're up against. And if I'm him, if that's still placed on September, I'm ready to peace out.
And then the other thing you probably want to think about the salary. Just looking at what I'm seeing for your size and complexity in the general, I think you're looking 150 to 2 to get somebody decent. And according to how far on the experience you want, if you get on the upper end, you may pass 2, but I think it'd be an over after 2.
I think it'd be light. I can't say.
You get somebody young.
The city of Brentwood, their finance director reports to their city manager, and their scale goes up to 156.
It starts at 156 to 219.
Did it start at 156?
It's 146 to 219, what we're saying.
So that is a layer under their city manager, and their requirements did not carry this much of contribution.
Smaller city, more expensive to live there, but that's what I mean, 146, I think the 219 is what they had advertised.
So would that really even be financial management? That'd be more budget's decision with them.
It will be.
But you guys may want to send a recommendation of where you think it's.
I like where you were going, Dr. Langford, just to go ahead and get a range or at least a dollar amount set so we can get in front of budget and be moving this parallel, getting our search firm identified, getting candidates identified. But I mean, this is just my thought, is that when we do a hire like this, is that we use this committee and Mr. Mayor and his office, we get everybody's all hands on deck to try to get the right candidate. I mean, I bring different skills, you bring different skills to the table. It's just trying to get the right candidate and not necessarily what lane it's in, but let's just get the right. But I do think this committee should have a big say in terms of who that person is. Now, we may not make the final decision, we might, depending on what act we're doing.
So let me see if there's any agreement on this. If we send a budget, a recommendation from financial management, that we have a transition time of up to 90 working days for Mr. Long, plus up to 60,000 to cover the cost of a search firm, plus a salary range of, let's say, 180 to 200.
Is that in the form of a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I'd like to entertain a couple of other ideas. I'm good with all that. Mr. Long's job currently is carrying a lot of different hats. And as we go into budget, I see a lot of these pieces that the contribution of the finance director If we lighten that load, then their compensation can be less. Right now, finance is carrying HR. If we had a mid-range HR manager to pick up that responsibility, so our new finance director isn't also carrying the HR duties. I'm suggesting that maybe we go to budget and ask for another person to lighten this load so that we don't have to have as much compensation. Be it HR, we've got the Title VI compliance. If we had a person working on compliance and it wasn't all on that seat.
Dustin works on it, but he's under my, I guess, care and custody is the best word, or works for me.
And I'm just looking,
Don't
maybe, we might
micromanage
need some additional resources.
As I'm saying, maybe, but the same thing, we start comparing you to the market right now, don't know if it's gonna have a significant impact at this point.
I just wanted to bring that out.
You get the hiring candidates to move across the country, you're gonna be looking at the hiring salaries.
Yeah. I think it's one of these that we compete with in the school system is, we don't, a lot of these big financial companies are doing 2, 3, 4 days a week working at home and paying more money than we pay. So it's like, the market out there is, we've learned that if you want top-notch financial people, you have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think particularly given the fact that we've got so much else in there.
It's carrying more than it should be.
I 100% agree with you about HR.
And it's also carrying risk management. There's a lot of risk management here that's going on. David's working with the actuaries on our risk management. He's doing a lot of those pieces that would be on another chair. So I would like to make a motion to send to budget an additional resource on top of the ones that are already being asked for so that we can lighten this load. And I ask for your input on that, Mr. Long.
We could definitely use the help in the office, and actually what we've got in our request for next year does have another accountant in there, but it's not like a senior, it's more like to pick up the day-to-day because we're running overtime and stuff is going on. But as I'm saying, I don't think it's going to lighten your load, and especially if we're going to get your overlap, we're going to better catch some of the stuff up, and at that point, the person could report back here to kind of tell you what's going on too. If it's not bearable or not. I've done it a long time. It's bearable. You may get somebody here that's it's not, but they'll probably quickly tell you. And if you have an experienced person, they may come back and tell you it's a bit of a heavy load.
I think it's great to get somebody for HR, but I don't know that getting the person that we need is gonna lighten the salary and price between the 180 to 200.
Oh, I think we're low.
Yeah.
I think what we're asking for is a lot more. I'm just trying to.
I think my question would be is, hear the mayor weigh in on where he sees, his operations going. And I think also, like, whoever comes in to replace David, having some input on seeing what their skills are based on who comes in to apply.
I think we just keep the ship going like it is until we have a new director, and we can talk about restructuring, finance, if there's an appetite to do that, to lighten the load for the new finance director. But I say we put all we can on David right now.
See if we can run him off.
But no, I'm just kidding. But no, right now, I think we just keep the status quo. And we really, at this point, we need to be focused on the budget. And that's where David's focus is right now.
Yes.
And we start adding new things, bringing new people, that pulls him from the focus of the budget.
And I just want to be clear, I wasn't adding a person this week. I was hoping to budget to hire a person maybe September or October so that we'd have them on board as we go into this transition.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I did ask for an additional staff member this year, but it won't really benefit me that much. But you have a heavy load in there of everything in that department, so there's some help needed that we're pulling right now, and I think anybody that's working in the office can tell you. Won't benefit me, so this is probably the best time to get an honest opinion of something really needed for an office and somebody going out. But it's needed.
And I think my concern, if we're doing a national search, is if we start adding stuff that we've just recently taken out, and the first thing you're going to do is a Google search, and it comes up, Sumner County had an HR department, got rid of an HR department, added one back in.
Oh, I'm not asking to add one.
Yeah.
But just.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. We need more help, obviously. And David was doing IT in 2014, in addition to,
30% of my time, couldn't keep our head above water, it was so bad. At the same time, we decided to do IT and 4 of the schools, so it was an unbearable load, but we've actually got an IT department now, which I can say thank you to the commission, because we definitely needed them.
I just want to interject here. I've seen this when I've shifted commands, is you can make these changes thinking they're for the best, but when you get that person at the helm, they're going to do things their way, and then you may have wasted money doing things that's going to get completely reshuffled again. My suggestion, and this isn't legal, but my suggestion is focus on your director and then take the input from them.
All I was proposing was we gave them some more resources and they could put it where they thought they might need it, because there's a lot there.
And I've
good to move on.
already requested one additional resource next year for the accounting, and then one for project management. We want to keep ramping it up because it's become a larger and larger.
It's already embedded in the budget.
I embedded them in there in the budget.
But it's not for the task I'm suggesting.
No, it's more for the day-to-day, because the county's growing and the responsibilities are growing daily.
All right, good for recruitment. All business?
Should we talk about item A?
Item A, can you address that?
Right now, and I'm trying to wait after budget, but we've talked before about the holdback, and there was some sent forward about possibly paying for a week and kind of getting the holdback that way, but when we get time and budget's done, I would like to take a little time to analyze it really closely and see if there's a possible way to do it with possibly some prepayments on the book and pulling them back and forth and get the same benefit without the funds, because it appears there's not a lot of appetite for the additional week, but we might be able to accomplish the same thing with a little bit of work. So I'm asking if we can move that to old business until after the budget's approved.
Can you give us
June
some?
2026.
That'd be the best.
David, are you?
I think we can do it like in August. I think the budget will be done. We'll probably get
Are
it.
you saying that there's a different recommendation than what you've had before?
I would like to look at it because we sent forward the cost with, and I understand, giving the employees the week to get the whole back, and there's been some, and it's been done in the state and Murfreesboro, but there's been a lot of discussion, and it goes back and forth, and it's went a couple of times forward already and back. Before you do it again, my thought process, when the budget's calm, give me enough time to analyze it to see if there's a workable, well-traceable solution of putting prepayments on the book and for those holdbacks, and see if we could do that. Because we're talking about 180 employees. Out of our 1,200, it's not a large number, but it's still going to create some additional complications. But I want to see if it's a bearable complication that we think we could do versus the 100. I don't remember what the cost was. It's back here. Well, I know it's went back and forth with the budget, and the cost would be possibly up to $305,000. We can see if we have time to analyze it really well and do some practice runs after budget, see if there's another way to do it.
I mean, there's no question we need to do it. You're saying it's just in terms of the mechanics of doing it.
Right, and one thing is to give the employees a week and hold them back. The other ones, if we recognize, say we give you the one, we recognize it as a recognized prepayment on the books, and then recover it when the employee quits or leaves or whatever. There may be a possibility to do it that way, but I want to look at the mechanics really closely and how we're documenting it, because one thing we don't want to do is start doing prepayments and cause a lot of confusion, and then you have complaints to the Department of Labor, and we spend more time on Department of Labor audits and possibly even lose funds there. So this is something that's going to take some time, but after budget and we get the books closed, it's something I could definitely look at.
So,
For September, right?
that's
Well,
what
I'm going to be September 1 or after, so we close our books on
2026.
Your contract's set up in such a way, your books have to be closed by August 31st or the end of August. So I set the contract up in a couple of things to guarantee that I would be here till you had your books closed and your budget. After that time, right now, as I'm saying, I'm not even looking unless I decide to go home and relax. It's a possibility, but right now I'm not even looking. So the intent is probably to stay to the 2026 June, but as I'm saying, just like everybody else, I got to do what's best for my family if something shows up. But that's not my plans at this point.
Okay, what I'm hearing, I guess, just to crystallize this, is keep it on the agenda, revisit it after that.
budget, we get the books closed, revisit, and see if there's another workable scenario where we think we can make it look and document it really well for Fair Labor Standards compliance, because that's a big concern. You know, you've got all these hourly employees. You don't want to save $305,000 and end up with a Department of Labor issue that's more than $305,000, is my only concern.
I still like this is one of those things that we kicked and kicked and kicked and kicked, and we're still kicking. And I'm not sure I know who's going to collect the punt at the end here.
Well, it's been going on for a long time.
Well, no, yeah, it really has.
If it's not workable, I'll come back to the committee and say it's not workable, and my same recommendation holds true. At that point, my recommendation would be to give the employees the hours and just pay it and eat it, because the damage you're gonna do to morale, if you withhold a week's worth of pay and then they've talked to other entities that's done it, it's gonna be damaging.
So I just want to go back. We had a proposal, and I think, that's correct, we voted on that. And the vote was to do exactly what you were saying. Why are we still talking about it?
It went to budget sent it back to financial management because they wanted additional consideration, because they're saying it's a $305,000 payout, and they sent it back to be looked at more. It came back from budget.
So the way I understood it's like a reclass. It's not necessarily, you're not spending new money here.
You are, that's what I'm saying. No,
Okay.
right now, let's just use one example. For next week, the employees will be paid Friday. They'll be paid on Thursday, but they actually work through Friday. We have to have enough time to pay the payroll, so we basically estimate that last week. When people quit, it's wrong, and it makes it very complicated for employees, especially for people trying to do timekeeping actual hours, because there's differences all over the place. There's only one or two ways we need to get a holdback of at least a week, so there's only really one or two ways. Do you hold back their check a week, or you give them a week? My other thought is, right now, we may want to look at a process where we basically, move them back the week, but we know they've got a prepaid week on the books. But we got to see how hard that is to trace, document, and how we want to document with employees. Probably them signing that they understand this and documenting that really well. Because the last thing we want to do is make it very blurry and confusing. Get a complaint from the Department of Labor, and you've got limited time and other stuff, and then they're coming in here, and after my time, the county ends up paying out a lot of money because of the way we're doing it. We just want to make sure we can document it well.
So, now,
Okay.
sorry, go ahead. But just got my moving. So this $305,000, this is not a one-time expense. It will be phased in as the people leave. We lose that week as they leave.
It would actually, as far as your budgetary, it would show up the year you done it, because we show accrual, so
We have to accrue.
every day you work, we accrue payroll at the end of the year, so budgetary-wise, we would have to cover it in the year we do it.
That's an account.
Well, we'll have to take it from budget.
It'll show up like a liability.
Count on budget, but it really won't show cash.
It-
You will be paying it out.
Right, because you're on modified accrual, so the actual expenditure will show up as a liability. It'll increase your liabilities, and then the cash will come out over time, but it's still going to be a payment over time.
P&L hit.
Right.
And that was your recommendation.
Right, but it went to budget, and there was a lot of concern about the cost and how the citizens, which rightfully so we're going to view it, was a lot of discussion I recall, so it came back
It's time
clear.
paid that's not worked. It's kind of how the citizens are looking at it. We can look at morale, we can look at the citizens. Yeah. But Mr. Long's going to look at it and come back, and we can make a decision then.
But I'll be honest, if it's not traceable, then I'll come back with the recommendation. I think you should pay it, and the reason I say that is because it's going to damage your morale. A happy employee is a more productive employee all the way around, if possible. And you can't just let them do whatever, but just happy as you can make somebody work.
There's a balance between morale and what's the right for citizens
Sure.
too. So we
Yeah.
got to understand
So that's why I want to look at the prepayment, because it would be the best fit. Won't affect your employees negatively, won't hurt their morale, and potentially get the holdbacks. That's what I'd like to look at, but I don't want to create a future Fair Labor Standards issue.
So the question is now, can we wait till September to discuss this?
So here's my thoughts. Let's run it up the flagpole again with budget. We got a different budget committee, so it's different people making the decision.
So,
Let's see what they think about it, so we can get it to the floor and
Would-
just let the commission take a vote.
and I wasn't going to get into my thoughts on it, because I thought we were gonna discuss it in September. I have another piece of this that troubles me. It's that everybody's on a different work schedule. So I wanted to see if we could get these work schedules kind of synchronized. We have, I don't know, that page is lengthy, like 20 different work schedules. We have people, their department ends their work schedule on Friday, some on Saturday, some on Sunday. And as we go forward, this is just a mess that we're handing off to the future. So I've asked Mr. Lawing, is when he takes a look at this, if we could get the work schedule synced out so it isn't such a mess going forward. So that was one piece that I'm looking at. It's not the money
Yeah.
piece, but it needs to be fixed also, and it needs to be fixed at the same
And
time.
I can't argue that at all, but I also think those are separate issues that would cloud each other.
We'll never get them fixed if we don't run them together, I
Well,
think.
I think you create confusion, and then it just get voted down.
The two issues you've got is the statutory officers have a right to, but they may be able to work with you. But the other thing, you're gonna run into some very odd schedules, such as the ECC has a very odd ending time in the middle of the day or night, I can't recall, where theirs ends, and then the sheriff has people that work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so they have
And
a very odd schedule.
And it may not be everybody gets there, but at least some of our, that's my, I would like to clean up some of that. If we had 20 different work schedules, if we could get it down to 5 work schedules, in the
agree.
future, it would be better.
But I venture a guess that's gonna be far more difficult, because we're limited. Just all don't work 8 to 4:30.
But we have offices that pay through Sunday that aren't open on Saturday and Friday and Sunday.
And that's a discussion we can have, I agree with you
Yeah.
100%,
And that's all I'm
but I think we need to separate it, is my thoughts. Because I would like to get this off of our agenda about the pay, and let's go ahead, so
is that your motion?
our employees know where we're taking, what direction we're taking on this, and that we are resolving it.
I understand. I can't support that because I'd like to see it all cleaned up at once, but I understand what you're saying.
Well, I
So,
will.
you have a motion?
If you don't mind, yes, I will make a motion that we bring that option to the Budget Committee for their consideration.
And the option, if I understand, is to budget, allocate monies to get this off
Yep.
schedule.
What we voted on before.
Yeah,
Is that a singular request, that, and Ms. Boyd is trying to do the schedule? Is yours to combine the two and get a vote? Not just-
Mine is, let's handle this one right now, and we'll start the talks on the schedules, get a handle on those, with David and all the departments, and I'd be more than happy to start working on that with David. But I think right now, for our employees' sake, let's get this issue settled.
Is there something that is hurting the employees?
No, it's just, anytime your pay's in question.
But we're not gonna take their pay. I'm sorry, we won't.
No, see, we don't know that. That's the problem. We don't know what solution's out there, so I want the commission to vote on this solution, yes or no.
So I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
All opposed? No. Mr. Kerr?
I'm not.
You're an aye. Motion passes.
Well, let's clarify, which option was that to give all employees 1 week?
That was, the one that you'd recommended for the $305,000.
Does that
It'll may
include,
adjust a little bit because people making different hours. We're gonna rework it.
We've had some salary adjustments since then.
It is time to move. I mean, this part of it has been out there for so long.
Yeah,
And I just
18.
think we need to, I wish we could get everything resolved tomorrow, but just from a financial perspective, I do think this has to be dealt with.
Thank you.
We'll work up the new amount.
David, is that something, I'm not saying with the budget coming up, is that something where we could just get a list of all the different, when the payouts are? Because, probably 85% of them could be, it's just a matter of saying we're gonna run it through Friday instead of Sunday.
I think it's just a ask.
Oh, you mean
I think it's a
Terry's?
simple ask.
You mean Terry's?
I'm just saying so we could visualize and see,
We've had it before.
yeah.
What I'm saying, the 305 or whatever is gonna completely hit your budget this year because.
No,
No, he's talking about the
I'm
work
talking about
schedule.
the work schedule.
Oh, yeah, we'll bring that back. We got one of those that had all those.
Yeah, we did it
I thought we
back.
did.
Yeah, that big giant sheet that had.
And it's all over the place. I think it's a simple ask. I don't
Yeah.
think that because
I think
nobody
it's
even
just more
sees it.
communication than it is.
And that's something that I can work on, because, you know, you can't tell the constitutional officers what to do.
But I thought we had asked to work on that like 6 months ago. But if we could,
David's been busy on the budget.
That's what we had.
And I haven't had a whole lot to do, but I've been a little bit busy too. But let's focus on that, David, what on that.
We'll bring you back that schedule for next month, and then, since we can't meet the commission for Monday, it'll be next month it'll hit.
Instead of-
We'll try to go to budget this coming
could
month.
you go ahead and send out to the departments that are affected a plan, instead of just bringing it back to us, because it's ultimately going to go to them.
Did
you
we
work
move their
up-
schedules?
Can you tell them what their works are?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Why don't we just send out the schedule where everybody's drops, and they're gonna have to get together and look at it, because, as I'm saying, you've got ECC with a very odd end time, and then the sheriff runs 12-hour schedules and 8.5-hour schedules, and they've got theirs broken such a way to keep from having people break across two payrolls as much as they can. Highway, I can't recall, Toby knows more about it on his end probably than me without looking at this point, but I don't think his is very odd at all, but it's probably a different time.
And then, also while we're moving forward with that, I'd like to pull us back to an earlier piece of this, when, for this fix, we would also be looking at the, correct me if I'm wrong, the executors or the constitutional officers receiving pay twice a month.
That's gonna be something you're gonna need to deal with probably next year, because the problem being is, they receive an odd payroll, but when we look at the end of the year, if we move them to paying them on the last payroll and the first time, the 15th and the 30th, they're not gonna get paid for an entire month. So that's something they're probably gonna need to plan and look about, kind of doing. I think the recommendation from audit years ago was twice a month or once, but it's been the other way for
So this was just another piece that
40
needs
years.
to also get handled, so we're just we'll try and figure that out.
I hate to belabor the point, but I think right now, if I could take the lead on talking with the departments,
Yes.
take that off of David's plate so that he can focus on what he needs to focus on, and I'll take the lead on contacting them on their hours.
Excellent. Can you report back next month?
Yeah.
Excellent. Come with a plan and we can go forward.
Big spreadsheet.
Yes, and if you could give him the current spreadsheet, and so he understands. Next item, Mr. Long.
based on Todd's recommendation, he said it was more for something he would recommend last month for finance to handle. So we've been looking at when the P cards, they're all over the place. There's some very high ones. What's happened over time is people's made one-time purchases or other ones, and what we're gonna look at is probably like a lower base tier of 2,000, and then look at somebody's expenditures over the last 6 months for a high month, and then if they have a request to kick them up for like a 3-month period, it's probably what we're gonna look at, because I think it was Mr. Sittler had a request for his office, and they did the P card for a one-time purchase, and basically they limit up for 1 month and back down. So we're going to look more into that, but you are correct. They are over time. There's not a lot of rhyme and reason, and several of them we look back, and they have some very large spending thresholds, but their expenditures have been small for probably a year now. We're going to go back and reset all those. We can bring you back an official policy, but the whole thing about policy, sometimes if it's something you work with without it, creates some red tape and flexibility that costs a lot of time.
Will you vote on the base amount?
I wouldn't think so. Do you just want us to determine, or do you want to do a policy-based amount?
I mean, I think policy probably would be the better way. That way you can articulate what the levels are so people can go and look at the policy that needs to.
How would a policy be if we put a base amount of $2,500 and finance will look at your spending over the last 6 months, and if a larger amount is justified, we'll work with them and increase it? Does that sound like a fair policy?
When you say, to me, if you're gonna put a policy together and this committee votes on the policy, it's 2,500.
Right.
Let's just say that that's the number. But in a month from now, you determine that it's 3,500 for that same department. This committee needs to have some visibility, I think, for what you're doing.
As far as changing the
Right. I mean, roll it out at 25,
Right.
give it a 90-day implementation, come back in 90 days and say, no, actually, this department needs 3, this one needs 5.
we have several departments going to need a lot more than 25. That's why we're saying base them to 25, but if we look back over the last 6 months, and each month they're running, some of them run 20, 30,000 a month. So we were gonna probably put them at, 105% of $20,000 if they're running an average of
You're
$20,000
looking at that on a per department basis, is that
per card.
per card?
We have all the cards, everybody has individual.
So what's the 2,500? What are you trying to?
For a base, for a department that's basically a low spender, just puts you as a $2,000 base. And then the rest of them will base it on a say, a 6 month average. Or the highest expended month for 6 months, 105% of the highest.
Okay, so I think I hear two different steps. One is to set a $2,500 base, and the other is to come back 6 months and tell us what the rolling average is for that department, and what you think they need.
I think the only problem you're going to run with that is you're going to have somebody in a department that legitimately has to buy $100,000 worth of stuff. Like the way we do it is we have certain people that are doing most of the active purchasing who have the highest limits, and then everybody else has a base, and if it's like, like maybe once or like we've had to with our CTE department because we've got the Innovative School Model grant money, so that's $1 million per high school. So our CTE purchasing agent has had to have hers extended, but we do it by the month. And so we have an approval a P card. Well, I mean, we do it digitally where we can, but there are some that you just have to do it by the P card. So we're not spending $1 million, but she might be buying a $60,000 piece of equipment, and then instead of having to go through every time she does that, and the next week it might be a $10,000 something, but we're rolling through $15 million. So, what the process that we have is we have a base amount, and then there's an approval process to go above that for a month, and then it drops back down to that 2,500. But we do have certain people that have higher P card amounts because they're making routine, you might have somebody that has to routinely buy parts or something like that that doesn't need to have to go through an approval process to go from 2,500 to 10,000.
Well, see, this is where it comes back to analyzing the spending needs of each P card. And if you have somebody that needs that level, let's say, in your group needs a $50,000 level. Well, if the spending and the authorizations and the approvals support that, then you give them $50,000 authorization. I still think this, even though it looks like a bad train wreck in terms of all the different amounts, this, that, and the other, maybe that's the way it ends up, is that there are different spending needs. What I'm concerned about a little bit as part of this committee is that these things grow over time. We, as a committee, have no visibility into this. So, to me, it's a combination. Maybe you want to set a base at 25, but to come back with a recommendation to say if you've got those high-end needs and spenders, come back and tell us what that amount should be, so we know what lane they should be in. You know what I'm saying?
Almost like a report.
Yeah. That's part two of this, is to come back and make this maybe a quarterly report to this committee in terms of P card and P card compliance and those things. Maybe that's already built into your model, I don't know. But,
I think we got about 60 departments. How many cards do we have? Yeah, probably because people use them for travel, so I'm saying we're not talking a few cards, they use them for travel and other, so we're thinking base, and then the people that use larger numbers set them based on.
just because you got more doesn't mean you need to do less work.
Right.
In terms of monitoring that. So I hear you.
Right.
But we let it get to this point. It just has grown. But so I think we need a good control document to see what's happening from just an overall internal control perspective. And it's your canvas to paint. I'm just asking for some kind of borders that this committee can look at. So, enough said, but I don't think setting 2,500 and that's it. You've got to look at, like Dr. Lincoln said, some of the high-end users of these cards. Just because they use it 50 times a month doesn't make it right.
That's what I was saying is $2,500 limit, then look at 105% of their highest month in the last 6 months.
Well,
That's probably the way to keep it.
They're still following all the purchasing rules, the purchasing policy when they make the purchases, or that gets caught by his office. So there is visibility into it. I think the question is how do we see what the overall limits are, so we don't have some $100,000 limits that,
Or not necessary. Maybe.
are not necessary, yeah, because that does open us up for the possibility of amount fee, and it's not even the person's fault, like, it's just now with phishing and everything else, somebody could have their
You
card
don't have to
stolen.
have that high, I've seen how fees at
So-
much, much lower level.
Sure. Yeah, but I'm just saying, if somebody stole your card number and you have a 2,500, it gets caught there as opposed to you have 100,000 that you don't need.
Yeah, let's take the risk off where we can. Mr. Law, you have something to add?
I was just gonna suggest, I don't know that this needs to be turned into some sort of formal written policy. It seems to me, since most of the finance director's guidance comes from you, if you could just leave it at his discretion, he can review the history and make those determinations, and if people feel there's a need, that's greater that the finance director's not seeing, then they can make some bona fide request of this committee to plead their case, and you can say yea or nay at that time. But I think the problem with written policies is sometimes you paint yourself in a corner. So that's my only suggestion.
Well, I think if we want to follow the policy, the policy would be to let the finance
Yeah.
director make these determinations.
Because
There's got to be a process articulated.
Yeah, I think that's not a policy. I mean, I just looked at ours. Ours guides who's responsible for reviewing purchases and things like that, but the actual amounts on those are governed through procedure, not policy.
And
The
everything.
policy is that person does it. The procedure is that they do the work.
Yeah, right, but what I'm saying is like, I think that, I suspect that if you just made all the constitutional elected officials of the departments aware, they could clean it up themselves and work with David, and then we could get, similar to the report that Ms. Boyd requested, where we could just see the amounts, because we'll catch what's actually spent through the regular accounting and
That's what we're doing
process.
already. We're working on it right now, we're bringing them together to see what they'll have in 6 months, because what you're gonna run into, somebody's gonna call, they need to do a purchase, and if we lock them down, they're gonna be 10 people call that morning, and if we set a policy, we're probably gonna be calling an emergency meeting to come in here and buy stuff. 'Cause
Yeah.
things like, especially during like COVID last big example, we were buying stuff overnight with the P card as quick as we could to just get
I'm with you, but we probably don't need a formal policy, other than the fact that you make the determination, that is the policy. But this committee has oversight in terms of where the monies are being spent collectively, not one P card at a time. You come back once a quarter and say, hey, here's our P card compliance. We've had to adjust 2 or 3, but we're pretty much in compliance. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about you call me every time or as well every time you have a change in a spending level. I'm talking about some parameters that have some governance around what we do. That's all.
So if everybody's all right, I'll make a motion that Mr. Lawing in September, because we know where he's gonna be, comes back with a potential, report and a recommendation. And this committee at that time will make a recommendation on how often that report will be prepared for this committee, be it quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. Is everybody, can I get a second?
I got a second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I'm gonna have to change my motion to David on 60 working days instead of 90.
So we move to item C.
Item C is exempt versus non-exempt employees, and what brought this up was a payout for an employee for compensatory time, and it was basically Miss Norfleet. She started in my office years ago, was moved to Mr. Holt's office, and then ultimately to Josh's office, and then was gonna be back to my office. And I kind of went through the whole thing. She was treated as a hourly employee the entire time, so to be an exempt employee, one, you've got to qualify for one of the exemptions, and then you've got to be paid on a salary basis and treated that way. She was treated as an hourly employee, and I went through several things. Our policy, and I went through it with Mr. Silla too to see if he's anything different, does not require any employee to be put on a salaried exempt basis. It allows the department head to put one on there if they do qualify. So there's many, many employees across the county that are paid on an hourly basis. If you want to put somebody on an exempt basis, then one, you've got to send stuff to my office that they qualify for one of the exemptions under Fair Labor Standards, and then you have to treat them as a salaried employee, and they have to meet the threshold. That's the way we treated all the employees, and there's a reason for it, because the employees get the better protection of federal law, state law, or the personnel policy, and our personnel policy has some ambiguities and some contradictions, so we look at it in the most favorable way that we can for the employees. The personnel policy is something that does need to be looked at, because if you look at it, for instance, and it is in our packet on page, some of the things that I do have a concern about. If you look on page, for instance, 71 is one of my concerns. And I've talked with the same length with the, I think I've kind of beat the horse to death, is what he told me at one point, asking questions with the county law director. If you look under page 71 on the work week, if you notice there's all those little standalone dots, which means they stand alone with their own explanation and all that. If you start reading those as standalone, they'll actually start contradicting themselves. And then if you read back on page 72, it goes into comp time, and it doesn't even say who's eligible for comp time, which would not be exempt employees. And then if you go up under employees exempt for overtime, it talks about it, but then it says exempt means from the requirement to pay. It doesn't say you can't pay them. And then the most concerning is if you go back to the very back for the compensatory agreement, it says in accordance with fair labor standards, but then, which means you can technically give it to anybody would be in accordance with that, compliance with it. It goes all the way down through there, and it talks about the compensatory agreement, and we've had many employees sign this, including exempt employees. So what I'm looking at to kind of get back is I think the way that Ms. Northfleet was paid out was the most appropriate, and the policy we're following right now is basically, other than a department head, that the department head or elected official determines if they want to treat somebody as exempt salaried, but if they do, it's got to meet under fair labor standards and all the other requirements. But even with that being said, I think the personnel policy itself needs some significant cleanup if we're going to continue under that practice, which I think is probably your best practice, or any other practice, because we're interpreting the most favorably just to come around some problems with the policy itself. But there's actually in the statutes a very specific way to amend the policy.
Can you go into how we can amend? Well, first of all, does anyone have any questions about the issues with this policy? Does anyone, and we won't take a vote, if anyone's opposed to us addressing, fixing this policy, they can speak to that issue.
Who does it
Now,
apply to? Well, now, it applies to
all the different departments.
It applies to all the departments other than like the elected officials. It applies to my office, it applies to Josh's office.
there's a list.
Yeah, there's a whole list in there.
So if Mr. Long could now tell us how this personnel policy can be,
Mr. Siller can correct me if I'm wrong. We brought a copy of the statute in case, Ms. Allison's got them in case he needs to look at them, but, we can, but my understanding on page 5 is where it would start is that basically the county mayor would need to choose somebody to work on the policies, and he would need to get the ratification of the county commission. It says,
this is it.
if we look at on page number 5, and we can pass it out, we can, when you amend the policy, what the statute says is you amend it the same way you adopted it. And to adopt the general policy, it says the county mayor and the county legislative body shall provide for adoption of base personnel policies. And basically the mayor will send a list of who's covered. Well, that's already done. We're not talking about changing who's covered. The second one is basically the county mayor will choose somebody to work on it with the ratification of county commissioners on page number 5. Yeah.
So I'm looking for a copy of the statute.
Yeah, Jessica, you have a copy of the statute?
I already gave them all with it. All the stuff is in it.
If the statute's in there, I'll
What it is? I've got a copy.
Yes, it's right here. Please.
Basically what it says, yeah, that one, that's the statute. Basically what it says in a nutshell is that you amend the general policy in the same way you adopt it. There's several steps. The first one is who's covered, but we're not talking about changing that. The second one, it gives the county mayor chooses who's going to work on them with the ratification of the county commission. So it would be kind of the mayor needs to choose who he wants to work on the policy.
By
If it's in
state
single
statute.
phase, yeah, it's by statute.
So we know you have plenty of time on your hands, Mayor. We're asking you to pick some people, your choice. But if the sooner we could get this,
September.
yeah, it's a good day. every day of September now.
Big month.
We won't even ask anybody. Is everybody all right with that every day?
You're wanting a review of the personnel policy.
And not just a review, we
It's
need,
been great, HR. So we'll take.
well, I tried to get an HR person in the budget, and I saw this problem coming. I knew it was coming to the table.
There's actually a list there of who the mayor can choose from. It's a fairly long list, so that would be your step. So it's just gonna take a while. He'll need to choose who the mayor feels comfortable to work on the policy. Because like everybody else.
Yeah, that's the process. We're picking the people that he chooses to run through commission. Once commission votes on it, then we get into the actual review of the policy.
The sooner September comes, the better.
The county mayor, agencies.
I think Toby's volunteering.
Is there anything else?
I think so too. I saw.
Did you see that? Did everybody see Toby volunteering down there to write personnel policy?
And I don't think
Still cleaning up after the storm.
I don't think it needs huge amounts of changes. I just think it needs to be looked at those bullet points and the part where it talks about how you're accounting for time and make sure that we are clear about what we're doing that kind of lines up what we're doing. The practice right now, what we're following is for anybody under this policy to be treated as exempt, it has to be a specific request from their department head, and they have to meet fair labor standards, be treated as salary purpose, and also meet the salary test. The other thing is if you're a department head, we always treat you as salary, but the policy don't even say that, unless you don't meet the salary test, which last year the budget committee said a couple of them were hourly because they didn't meet the salary test, but if you read here, the salary test has now been challenged, so we're still going the most conservative. That's what we're doing right now. So by and large, most of other than department head employees across the county earn through this policy overtime and comp time.
And I'd like to address that just after, I just want to clarify what the lawyer said. The mayor's going to pick a group of people. That group of people will have to be ratified with the commission, and then that would come back, that group's policy would come back here.
On passage of that, they could begin the work and then present something.
Everybody's clear? We don't need a vote on that.
Somebody
That's
needs to carry it to the commission.
we don't need a vote on that, right?
No, I
That's
think
just
it's
how the
his
process,
statutory.
it's his, excellent. I would just like to add to that regarding comp time, I'd just like to have a general discussion on comp time with this table. Comp time is not required to be accrued for in our financials. We couldn't accrue for it if we wanted to, am I correct?
You do accrue for it.
But we accrue for comp time?
Your comp
Do we
time.
have a list of comp time?
Yes, we have a list of comp time.
We
We
do.
show vacation time, and we put it on the books. Compensatory time's out there. I don't know if we, I'm gonna have to look.
I don't know that we're, I don't know if we're
I don't know if we
correct.
are, 'cause I have to look at that.
I don't think we are. So if you could look at that, and if
For
we're not,
vacation, comp time's
for the next meeting, if we're not, I'd like to, it'll be off the books if it's how I think it is, because I don't think we accrue for comp time, under modified accrual.
You do on your entity-wide statements.
On the entity-wide, but not,
Not on your funds, you won't.
so I'd like to discuss maybe, finance, at least keeping us up to date on how much comp time is out there. We have some departments that are running comp time we might not be aware of until that employee does leave, and I don't think we have any limits on it. We have limits on vacation.
240 hours.
Is it on the comp time also? Comp time and vacation?
Yes, your vacation you can carry over up to 6 weeks. On this policy, your comp time's limited to 240.
Excellent.
And then your vacation time, you can carry 6. And then if you've been here for 5 years or more, you can earn up to 3 and prorated. So by the most, you can carry over 6, and say if somebody left, they could have earned 3 more weeks of vacation
Yeah.
versus a prorated amount according to however they start the year. If they started in July,
So-
they could have earned quite a bit again.
The rework of the personnel policy would
12 weeks.
address all that, I think. Yes.
That's already
Okay.
worked out, that stuff is. The only question I've got is, there's some, if you take the standalone bullet points, which should stand alone, is my understanding, and is that your understanding? They do not necessarily agree with each other, so they conflict, so we take the most
Yes.
liberal interpretation for the employee, which is what you'll have to do because the county wrote those policies.
In the interest of time, the mayor has heard you, and he will make sure that gets taken care of.
So basically what we're doing is
All
fine
right.
if we just line the policy.
Excellent.
So let me ask just quickly, you said we're including things that says.
He's gonna check on it.
We accrue vacation
If we can accrue up to 240
hours.
hours, then how are you paying out if you're not accruing?
Well, I'm gonna have to look on the entity-wide. They don't show up on your funds. The entity-wide, we show vacation, everybody shows accrued vacation, but I'm gonna have to to look back and make sure that we shouldn't be showing any accrued comp time. A lot of your departments don't have comp
So if
time,
you,
or a lot of it.
the organization in the county, you got 240 hours of comp time, do you get paid out on that?
If you're being treated as an hourly, yes, and an exempt employee shouldn't have comp time, so. So like me, I wouldn't have comp time, I'm an exempt employee. Eric, but, you know, she would have comp time, or we're paying her overtime. A lot of times what we do is if you've got comp time in finance, we go ahead and pay it out, we don't want to.
Comp time is determined by the manager or supervisor, or
Comp time or overtime within budgetary limits. But if you give somebody comp time and they're an hourly employee, you've got to make a reasonable attempt to let them use it when they ask for it. You can't be overly restrictive, so you got to be careful with it.
So that'll be a conversation for the personnel policy. We can move on to new business, purchasing and bid issues. Item A.
On page 112. On page 112 is your list of exemptions. Page 113, the first one is for planning and engineering, and as we're saying, we're still in the process of everything's being moved around and you know, all the projects and everything, and the county engineer is working on the project for the construction of the Westmoreland EMS station, and he's only had one other exemption all year on this one, but basically what happened was there was additional funds, there was work that needs to be done, but he just failed to get a PO for, I think it was $47,5406 and $550, and his corrective action plan would be to read the policy, and he has been informed that POs are required for certain dollar limits, so my recommendation would be to approve payment of this.
Second. Third.
And there is emails back and forth where he's been informed of that and he's planning to do it, so there is a requirement for a corrective action plan, but I think that would be, unless you guys disagree, would be okay.
Review.
Yeah. Would that be, as far as the committee, considering a corrective action plan on that one?
I consider it correct.
So, and I'm good with all that, it's just that that is always the training has been the corrective action plan for every one of these. Can we have a training session?
We'll try to set one up when we get the books closed. We send emails to the department heads each month. But I think maybe when we get the books closed and get everybody, maybe in early October, try to set up a session where we have one of our staff members sit down and go through some of the more, I guess, where people miss the issues on purchasing. Maybe that's what we can do in October and see if that helps resolve some of it. Right now, between now and October, the reason I say that, we're going to be doing budgets and year-end, and it takes.
I'd just like to ask the maker of this motion if I can make an amendment to that everyone that has a purchase order exception for the year where the issue was training is required to send their an employee from that department to the training. Because our list is we're on the second page now, and it's always training. They just didn't know. We're going to have them read the policy again. We need to at least steer somewhere towards correcting this training issue. So I'd just like to amend that.
Let's dispose of this one.
And then we'll.
I'm not in agreement of the amendment. Let's dispose of this one, and if you want to make a separate motion, you can. That will be more general to all departments. I don't want to tie this to one department.
Fair enough. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed?
You want to go ahead and do that, or do item 2 first, do your proposal for the training, before I get into item 2?
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion that if finance can pull together a training class, and our finance director hasn't left, we have a new person, that we ask all of the departments that have had purchasing order exceptions, especially the ones that have had multiple, to send an employee for training for our purchase orders, because we seem to have a training issue.
I'll try to do them October of each year, if that's okay.
October of each year sounds good, an
Let's do
annual training.
October training, and that would be our best time, probably October.
I'm always for training. That's my motion, so give me a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
What if we just had a simple one? Like, we have pretty complicated purchasing policies too. We found, like, we have some one-pagers just to give people. So, like,
Quick sheet.
spending limit 500, get a PO, you know, just kind of like a little flow chart that goes over 500, you gotta do this. 'Cause it's not, like, I bet if you look through that whole list, it's not anybody that's doing it intentionally, it's just a mistake one time, and it's hard to go through the
Good idea.
35-page purchasing policy. It makes sense, I mean, I'm not gonna say that I sat through some of David's bond presentations. It makes sense to accountants. Yeah, I mean, we deal with this all the time. We have people that are CPAs, and then we have people that are administering policies that taught second grade, and they're just not accountants, and they make mistakes, so.
I agree, that's a good idea.
One pager or something helps.
You saying everybody's got a bigger?
The teachers follow directions though, right? I mean, that's the difference.
Yes.
The thing is, everybody's got to remember these aren't the people's primary duties, so they don't always understand.
That's what I was thinking. I think it's just always a question, how do you leave the information in their hands?
This one's on number 2. This is a rather complicated project and involves ARPA. It is I think it's called the Meadows, or, I should remember the name of it. Hose. It's the hose, and it involves a drainage issue, and it involves some ARPA funding, and it's been going on for quite a while, and we've ran into a little issue, mainly misunderstanding about how change orders work, but it's caused a few issues, and as I'm saying, it involves engineering. Basically what's happened, they bid the project, and when they bid the project, they did some language. There's some my understanding now, they can correct me if I'm wrong, there's some internal and there's some external utilities. I think the original intent in the bid was to move out the external utilities and maybe talking to the internal utilities, kind of leave them in there, but they couldn't get a good grasp on what needed to be done for that, so they removed it from the bid process. We didn't realize about the utilities, but we were reading the part of the internal and external that all utilities were basically going to be bid later. That was kind of the way it would allude you to believe. So there's not been a meeting of the minds, even with the specs. We went out and they bid it. So the whole project has been bid. It's been bid with the person doing, that's not really construction, but the, what you call it, not construction, what would you guys call it? Dozing construction. So when we came back, there were some change orders. The first one was fine, it's $15,000, it was fine. And the second one came back for $50,000, and we were trying to line it up to the bids and couldn't, and that's when we started talking to our county engineer. He didn't realize that, you know, the way we were looking at it's outside the scope because the original, these particular utilities aren't within the scope, or that it wasn't unforeseen because he knew about it. He thought he could use the contingency because it was hard to estimate. So we're not knowing what we ran into because it wasn't originally scoped in there, and it's about $50,000. It's actually considered a non-bid item, and it was foreseeable, so it's outside the policy. So what it's ran into is we can't, under 2 CFR, because of our policy and just the way the things work, it's not going to qualify for the ARPA funds, and it's failed to be bid. But so I think the best way, since we've already done some of the work and we've talked to Eric, we've actually got the change order. I think we're going to have to honor it even if it's not bid at this point, including what he's going to bring forward. My idea is, one, is to approve this, and we've talked to Marshall. He understands it now, and I think the additional training, because he's not doing this, he's out doing the engineering stuff. And as far as the funding, my thought process is we look at it and bring it to budget, because what I think we can probably do is we've got the excess that's on the EMS station over in Westmoreland, is we go back to county commission and we move some of that funds over to the ARPA because we did it out of regular capital. That'll free that money up and reallocate it for about $120,000 over into the haulers project. That'll fix all the funding issues. The bid issue we can't technically fix. It's a misunderstanding. I don't know if audit will say anything or not, but my recommendation at this point is Marshall sent us all kinds of documentations that I would consider a corrective action plan. At this point, we went back and forth with them and Josh working on it. So my recommendation is at this point, we send it back to budget to try to reallocate the funds for the ARPA because we can't pay it through there, and to give him an exception for this. And he's probably going to have another change order, if I'm not mistaken, for some more utilities. Potentially. But at this point, it would be impossible if they've already dug. They're already digging and grading, and they've already dug down utilities and moving stuff. So at this point, bidding it and bringing in additional for whatever portion left would not be, not be even feasible at this point. They wouldn't want to work together. So
We got a time limit on our ARPA.
So, yeah, that too. So I think it was just a simple misunderstanding based on the verbiage with the intent, and if you look at the bid I included to let you see it, he did all his work. He had a consultant working on him, a very, very long, drawn out, RFP, because it involves a lot of stuff.
I'll make that
Amen.
motion. Second.
And I did have Mr. Sittler in the queue, so I'm sorry, I did have him in the queue, so
You
just
still
real quick.
speak to the motion.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out from a legal perspective that, we can't unring this bell, and there are pitfalls involved. So I believe David has talked to me at length about this, and I think this is the path of least resistance, and just take whatever chewings we get after the fact, because
I agree.
there's too many other contingencies if we don't do it this way.
And then send it on the budget to try to unravel. I think we should, with the
So-
committee's approval, continue moving forward because of the time.
Yeah,
Length of
and
budget
we
needs
have a
to be
motion and a
reallocated.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Motion to adjourn.
Say next month.
Oh, we want to talk about the 81 Act again?
Yeah, let's do.
Still on that.
Every day,
Out of here.
every day until September 1st.
Get out.